6 of the province's biggest for-profit long-term care providers are now facing class action lawsuits.
What we all saw unfold, which was just massive, widespread, often preventable negligence.
The class action suits alleging that negligence resulted in numerous illnesses and deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus,
I mean, it looks like an Alfred Hitchcock movie down there. You've got thousands of birds flying around looking for a place to nest.
the solution the TTC says it's ready to resort to control the seagull problem at its Leslie Barnes streetcar maintenance facility. And
this BMW then struck the rear of a straight truck.
Police are searching for 3 people who fled the scene of a crash on Highway 400 that killed someone in their car. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. 6 of the biggest for-profit long-term care providers in this province are now facing class action lawsuits, all for gross negligence during the COVID-19 pandemic. An Ontario court has certified the class actions, which means the cases can now go forward. Our senior Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has this story.
Spring of 2020. COVID-19 had brought lockdowns to Ontario, and the pandemic was hitting some long-term care homes so hard that the military was called in to help. By the time the COVID vaccination campaign rolled out a year later, nearly 4,000 long-term care residents had died, and those deaths happened disproportionately in for-profit homes.
Massive, widespread, often preventable negligence that resulted in far too many unnecessary deaths and just trauma that will live with these families for the rest of their lives.
The claim of negligence will now be tested in court. The Ontario Superior Court has certified class action lawsuits against 6 of the major long-term care chains. They ran homes where many hundreds of residents died.
There are many homes in Ontario that didn't have a problem, and but these were the worst offenders from our perspective. We allege that their conduct fell far below any reasonable standard.
Teresa Pugliese is one of the victims whose story is driving the lawsuits. She died of COVID in May of 2020 after another resident in her shared room caught the virus.
So many people on that floor, on the 3rd floor of the Chartwell home, died, and we believed not proper steps were taken.
CBC News contacted all 6 chains facing the class action lawsuit for comment. Most declined because the case is still before the courts. A spokesperson for Chartwell said the claim does not have any merit and the company intends to vigorously defend itself. One of the lead lawyers representing families calls certification of the class action a big deal.
These are milestone events that you have only one shot at getting the case certified. And in this case, we were successful.
Any step closer to accountability and justice is a step in the right direction.
The court declined to greenlight separate class actions against municipally run and independent homes, saying the cases didn't meet the legal bar. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
To the latest on the measles outbreak now. Less than 3 months into the year, and the province has already seen more cases of measles than in all of last year. 2 new cases, one in Simcoe County, the other in Hamilton, makes it 8 confirmed cases so far in 2024. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
Make sure that your vaccinations are up to date.
Ontario's health minister says public health units across the province are focused on getting people, especially children, vaccinated for measles.
We do have sufficient supply. We've actually procured additional vaccines if needed.
The Muskoka-Simcoe District Health Unit confirmed 1 new case, listing areas of Cookstown, Alliston, Thornton, Angus, and Collingwood as locations where the public may have been exposed.
We have been advising members of the public in general, healthcare providers who provide care for their patients, children attending school for whom we do not have records of being current in their immunization.
A list of specific locations can be found on the Simcoe-Muskoka Health Unit's website. Meanwhile, Hamilton Public Health Services has confirmed another case and says it was likely contracted on a trip abroad. Pearson Airport is among the possible exposure locations, raising concerns during the busy March break travel period. A spokesperson for the Greater Toronto Airports Authority says Pearson Airport is working closely with public health units and regularly disinfecting high-touch surfaces throughout the terminals. But infectious disease experts say even if travelers have been on a flight later flagged for possible exposure, they shouldn't panic.
You don't know how far you might have been from the case, and maybe from the ventilation point of view, they would consider that you probably have a very low risk.
There are also some extra precautions passengers can take.
This is an airborne virus, so the N95 mask would be best for providing protection. And additionally, if you can try to stay in well-ventilated or filtrated areas, that will also reduce the risk.
But ultimately, he says the best precaution is to make sure you're fully vaccinated.
I think the main thing is for people to be aware of their vaccination status, to make sure, check their vaccination records to make sure they've had the 2 doses that they need for good protection.
The measles vaccine can be provided at any healthcare provider's office or at some public health clinics. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
The TTC says one of its primary maintenance facilities is dealing with a foul problem. Thousands of seagulls have been making Leslie Barnes their home, and it's leaving behind quite the mess. As Patrick Swadden explains, the transit agency has come up with a loud solution.
Plenty of rain coming down from the sky here in Leslieville this Thursday evening. But according to the Toronto Transit Commission, it's another thing dropping from the sky that has them concerned about their Leslie Barnes streetcar maintenance facility.
When you have this amount of feces, it can actually create health challenges like avian flu.
The culprits? Thousands of seagulls. Seen here in a TTC video taken yesterday, the agency says they've been increasing in recent years, with over 10,000 of the birds visiting Leslie Barnes each year. Spokesperson Stuart Green adding, employees at the facility have at times used umbrellas to shield from the steady downpour of dung.
We've installed some netting on the top, and that's our first course of action.
And the second course of action? Cannons. Okay, not like those. The transit agency saying they'll use sound cannons, pictured here, no real ammunition, but fired sporadically to deter the seagulls from making the roof their home. Green says the cannons won't be fired outside 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
We've measured it from the nearest residential property, which is just north of Lakeshore off of Leslie. It's about 60 decibels, which is, a conversational level.
It's not the only idea they've had. The GTAA, which operates Toronto Pearson Airport, have used 25 birds of prey, including falcons, to keep its runways safe from birds, something the TTC did look into.
It requires a different kind of attention. It requires having experts on hand on a regular basis.
The TTC says wires and roof sprinklers failed and plastic sheets killed the plants on the roof. The agency consulted with bird and wildlife experts before making the decision. For now, Green says the cannons will act more as a backup, as they are having some success with the netting. The TTC says they're going to trial the cannons for 3 months. At the end of June, the agency will assess whether they've been effective in cutting the crap. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
And you're looking at a live shot of Toronto tonight, and it's a wet one. Rain heavy at times. Currently, it's 6 degrees in the city. Victor Paolo joins us now with a first look at your forecast, and Victor definitely needed our umbrellas tonight.
Well, the rain has returned, and not only has the rain returned, but Kelda, you returned as well to the Late Show. Always great to have you back. Now, the good news is the rain is not here to last. We're expecting cooler and colder days ahead. Now, taking a look at Sunday, we're expecting some flurries to arrive and even lows closer to -4. Now, taking a look at what time our show started, it's still going to be wet, and that wetness will last all the way through the time we begin our day on Friday. But the good news is the majority of your Friday will be a day where, well, it's not going to be that much rain, as we do see the majority of that rain will be all said and done by the time the Friday does begin. Quick look at our 3-day forecast. It's going to be a cloudy Friday, including another cloudy Saturday, and the temperatures do start to drop. But the big takeaway here is that snow we're expecting on Sunday. A little bit of flurries, not a big storm, and definitely not a storm at all. It's just going to be just a light sprinkle, like they like to call it. Over to you, Kelda.
Thanks, Victor. Toronto police are looking for the driver responsible for a hit-and-run collision on Dundas West tonight that injured 2 pedestrians and left a trail of damage. It happened near Dundas and Lisgar at around 8. Police say a vehicle struck the pedestrians, a gas line, as well as the side of a building. The pedestrians were not seriously injured, but the gas line was severed and the building sustained extensive damage. Because of the gas leak, nearby buildings were evacuated and the power was cut in the surrounding area as a precaution. Police are searching for the suspect vehicle, described as a silver sedan or Honda Civic. And police are searching for 3 people who fled the scene of a fatal crash on Highway 400. According to the OPP, a car slammed into the back of a truck early this morning, and one of the occupants of the car died. 3 others who were inside the same vehicle fled the scene on foot. Greg Ross has the details.
It was a high-speed collision just after 5 o'clock this morning involving a BMW and a truck. It happened in the southbound lanes of Highway 400.
This BMW then struck the rear of a straight truck, causing it to spin and collide with the concrete barrier.
Police say a male occupant of the BMW died before emergency crews arrived on scene. That person was found on the road outside of the car.
The body was located near that vehicle, and it is suspected that that is the vehicle that body came out of.
At this point, police have not identified that person. Police believe there were 3 other people in the BMW at the time of the crash, but for some unknown reason, they fled the scene before emergency crews arrived. Due to the severity of the crash, police say it's possible the other passengers may have been injured.
We are looking at local hospitals to see if anybody, went in there from a car accident or collision to see if they sustained any injuries.
The driver of the truck was not injured, and neither was the driver of another car that was damaged in the collision.
Another passenger vehicle that was traveling in the area was involved in the collision, and right now we're still trying to determine how it was involved in the collision, either by debris on the roadway or the spinning BMW.
Police are now looking through footage from traffic cameras in the moments leading up to the crash, hoping it will provide some answers.
We are going to be looking at that footage to see, where these vehicles got on, to see if they were racing or if they were just traveling by themselves at a high rate of speed.
Police are also in the process of trying to determine who the BMW is registered to and whether or not it had been reported stolen. The southbound lanes of the 400 were closed down for several hours this morning as a result of this crash. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
To Scarborough now, where police are investigating after a woman was found dead inside a townhouse. As Dale Manukduk reports, police were called to the scene by a man who they later arrested.
Video obtained by CBC Toronto shows the fire service arriving at a townhouse condo early this morning. Moments later, a man in a dark hoodie is placed under arrest. The video is provided by a neighbor who wasn't comfortable going on camera.
I do know it might be helpful to the police, so I gave them it. And that's all I'm hoping for, to get justice for what happened.
Police were first called to the scene around 4 a.m.
The police were called to this residence by an individual, a man in his 40s, who had stated that he had caused harm to another individual, a resident of this building.
When police arrived, that man was outside and identified himself as the person who made the call. Officers then found a woman dead inside the unit.
That still is to be determined as to what transpired inside this residence as well. It's an isolated incident in a townhouse behind us. We don't know what weapons, if any, were used, but ultimately the force that was inflicted upon her was enough to cause her death.
Residents of the townhouse complex along Scarborough Golf Club Road near Kingston Road were caught off guard when they woke up to the large police presence.
I'm shocked. I'm really shocked because this is a very quiet area, it's very friendly.
It's so sad because we're here for so many years and we didn't hear anything like this before.
Police say that the woman lived in the townhouse unit behind me. They say that the man in custody and that victim are known to each other. They're still trying to determine the exact nature of the relationship. Police haven't released the identities of the victim or man who was arrested. No charges have been laid at this time. Investigators say they aren't looking for any other suspects. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. We have an update to a recent investigation we brought you about pharmacists facing pressure at Shoppers Drug Mart to bill for medication reviews. Now, the service, which is paid for by the government, sees pharmacists go over prescriptions with patients. Now, in our last story, the president of Shoppers denied the pressure and said there were no targets placed on staff to bill. But as Angelina King tells us, that goes against what some pharmacists say and what internal records show.
Late last month, the president of Shoppers Drug Mart, Jeff Legier, had this to say about targets or quotas for billing taxpayers for medication reviews.
We don't have targets or any other kind of element like that.
But it didn't take long for more than a dozen Shoppers pharmacists to reach out to us with a very different story.
It was really disturbing to us as associate owners to hear that.
I was very angry because this is not the truth.
He knows full well that they're in place.
CBC isn't identifying those pharmacists because they're current or former Shoppers pharmacy owners and fear reprisal for speaking out. We aren't using their real voices. But they all had the same thing to say, that Shoppers leadership does pressure them to meet targets, and not just for medication reviews, but for all professional services, including prescribing for minor ailments and handing out naloxone kits. Most of the services are billed to the government. The pharmacy owners get a cut, the rest goes to the corporation.
We have brought this up many times starting last year that there shouldn't be any targets or quotas when it comes to professional services.
Internal documents from across the country obtained by CBC News show weekly and yearly plans for how much money pharmacies are expected to bring in from professional services and pressure from higher ups to hit those numbers. Like this January email from a district manager stating, "I am writing to express my deep disappointment in our team's performance during the first week of 2024. Despite clear plans and expectations, it is evident that we fell significantly short of our targets. I expect each team member to reflect on the reasons for this deviation from our plans and be prepared for immediate improvement." CBC requested an interview with the president of Shoppers about his claim the company doesn't have targets for medication reviews. We were told he was unavailable. A Shoppers spokesperson did tell us the company stands by the president's previous remarks and that their role is to help owners by working with them on a yearly plan to deliver professional services specific to their community. But current and former owners say they have zero say in the plan.
You have to figure out a way.
Shoppers also said, based on some recent feedback we've heard from a few pharmacists, we're reinforcing mandatory training for both our field and store support teams on the appropriate use of pharmacy metrics for patient outcomes, as well as our expectations for how to support and communicate with associates and their pharmacy teams. The pharmacists say the pressure to hit their targets intensified last year after they claim revenue from COVID testing and vaccines started to wane.
I don't think they wanted to see any of that money disappear.
Internal records show in a single week in Ontario last month, Shoppers billed $1.8 million in professional services. More than 3/4 of that was for medication reviews. And one pharmacy saw a more than 300% increase in the number of reviews it billed between 2022 and last year. The pharmacists we spoke with say they support providing these services, but
it is totally unethical to have targets.
This interferes with our professional judgment as a pharmacist.
And this issue has caught the attention of Ontario's regulatory body for pharmacists. It says it's working on solutions. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to an update to a story that has caught the attention of dog lovers across the GTA. A Toronto judge ruled today that Alicia Verma must turn over Rocco Jr., a 2-year-old bull terrier, to the family of her deceased boyfriend. Her lawyer shared how Verma is reacting to the verdict.
She's processing this. She's deciding what she wants to do next and figuring out her game plan. So I don't want to say too much, but I know that she's in a difficult place.
Verma has been ordered to turn the dog over to Leonard Carvalho's sister by tomorrow. Verma and Carvalho were in a relationship for 6 years before he died in November 2022. Now, she claims he bought her the dog, but Carvalho's sisters argue the dog is their property as the beneficiaries of his estate. Victor Palo joins us again with a look at your long-range forecast. And Victor, after what felt like spring yesterday, much cooler today, and it's only going to get colder.
Taking a look at our daily highs and what are the trends telling us? Well, it looks like that polar air mass is really working its way down to southeastern Ontario. That's why by the time Sunday arrives, it'll be a day we're going to be experiencing a bit of flurries as well as colder temperatures with a low closer to -4. Now, here's what's happening when it comes to the overnight. By the time we start our morning on Friday, it's going to be around 5 degrees. It's going to be mild. It's not going to be like our morning, which we experienced on Monday, where temperatures will be much more brisk. Now, here's what's happening when it comes to the wind, and what is the wind telling us? Well, those strong winds that are coming in from the northeast are really a big contributing factor as to why things are cooling down over the next couple of days. Now, also, when we're looking ahead as to what the morning will be, the warning is not going to be as gusty when it comes to the wind. Of course, it shifts from the northeast to the northwest, but the big thing is it's back to double digits in the teens. It's not longer going to be in the 50-kilometer-per-hour range. Now, when looking at the Golden Horseshoe and what's going to be happening with all that rain, well, here's your morning on Friday. A lot of that rain will pass. Cloud cover will increase as we get later on into the day. There will be some periods of some scattered showers, as we do see here, but it's not going to last long, and it's not going to be bringing that much precipitation either. Now, quick look at our 3 and 5 day forecast. One thing to note, well, we're looking at that temperature drop from Friday to Sunday, from a high of 10 on Friday to a low of -4 on Sunday, and also we're expecting flurries on Sunday. Now, what else is in store for the rest of our forecast? Well, as we talked about, the continuation of flurries on Monday, and by the time we reach Tuesday, it's going to be a mix of rain and snow, depending on how the temperatures will be. But the good news is, if you stay tuned to us, we'll keep you aware as to how to best prepare. But the good news for Friday, keep an umbrella close by because it won't be that wet, but at least you won't be caught off guard. Hope you all have a great night. And over to you, Kelda.
All right, thanks so much, Victor. And finally, tonight, residents have just a few days left to lace up their skates as the city plans to close all the public rinks by Sunday. And despite the unseasonably warm weather, the city says the ice rinks were used over 500,000 times this season. Once the rinks close, city staff will begin to convert some locations into spaces that can host warmer weather sports. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.